back to another episode of New England Road Talk. I'm Conrad Leger from Environmental Partners. I'm joined again by Art Baker of Indus and Bobby Betsold of Allstate Material Group. And guys, this is really exciting. We had our first interview today, conversation with somebody other than us. And we were joined by Scott Kinmond, Town Administrator of New Durham, New Hampshire. Art, I thought the conversation was awesome. It really, hit home with a lot of the folks that are out there and what they're going to be interested in hearing, not only from the public works perspective, but also from the town administrator standpoint.
Yeah, I mean, we always thought having guests on was going to be an incredible experience, and Scott knocked it out of the ballpark today. Having him on he gave such a refreshing view of his unique situation, being a past public works director as well as now a town administrator. And I think he really brought validation to what we've covered in the first few 1, 2, 3 episodes that we've done so far. So I think this is an excellent episode. I think bringing guests in is going to be awesome, and there's going to be more to come. So yeah, it was a great job.
Couldn't agree more. It's just people saw enough of us in the first 3 episodes. Hearing somebody else, it gives validation to it. And a great preview for a lot of the things to come leading into it. His perspective, again, from all of those different areas, and also from the side of the education portion of it and his involvement with a lot of different things. This is certainly one that I think we couldn't have picked a better person to be our first guest and to really kick this all off for the podcast and going forward.
Absolutely. All right. Well, without further ado, next up, our conversation with Scott Kinmond, Town Administrator of New Durham, New Hampshire.
All right, Scott. Well, thank you for being here. First, if you could start off and just tell us a little bit about your background and municipal sector and kind of how it ties into public works.
Sure. Thanks for having me. Well, basically, my background's about 35 years in municipal work. Started out with a 24-year in law enforcement, 11 years as the police chief in Lakes Region community up on Lake Winnipesaukee. And I moved and retired. I didn't move physically. I stayed right in the same town, but moved into another branch of municipality. I ran for the elected position of road agent, which was a DPW director position. And went into that. And for 7 years, I was the public works director in that community as well. And so I've had good success. And now I've ventured into the administration side of things. Some days I question whether or not that was a good move, but it's nice because I'm able to actually touch and feel, so to speak, all the different municipality functions, whether it be police, fire, public works. I have of course, having those backgrounds really assists me greatly in being a town administrator, I have to say. So that's a good thing.
That's great. Really, and it's interesting because you have a really unique background of knowing the public works side of things, but being in a position where you're in control of budgets and, most public works officials are usually fighting for the budget, and you understand what that fight is all about and why they're asking for the funds that they are. I'm really interested to hear how COVID has kind of impacted your overall budget going into FY22, and what type of adjustments you intend to have to make with your road budget, and also maybe even affect your winter maintenance budget as well.
Yeah. So, really here for us in 2020, of course, we're on a calendar year budget here as a municipality. So that actually impacted us. Well, really started really impacting us in 2020, of course. And what we ended up doing, our Board of Selectmen here actually froze a large percentage of our capital program for roads, actually, because that is the biggest nugget that we actually have here in town. So they froze about $200,000 of our actual road budget, which was earmarked for doing a lot of our pavement preservation work. We spend roughly here in this community close to $330, $350 on pavement preservation work. And we were only able to, in 2020, be able to do about $159,000 worth of that, which at that time we actually did shim and overlay type of preservation work. We really wanted to do a lot more preservation work because, as you know, with using other treatments, you can do miles and miles more. But unfortunately, the money was frozen because we were really concerned about revenues coming in from the state, and then also revenues coming in from tax payments, for fear of people being unemployed and having those struggles, not being able to pay their taxes. So we did have some slow tax money coming in, which did impact us. We did have some frozen lines within the DPW. Like we didn't rent an excavator, there was some other roadside mowing. Those are all necessities as far as doing maintenance, general maintenance work and preservation work, as far as keeping up with the maintenance of your infrastructure. So that did really impact us that way. We were fortunate, knock on wood, we've been healthy as far as a COVID situation with our staff. The staff's done a great job at making sure they're doing, following the best management practices that they can, surrounding the whole CDC guidelines and everything the best that you can. It's tough though, they work in a tight group out there, and they're fortunate to be outside in the fresh air most of the time, so that's good.
Yeah. Just as a follow-up to that too, are you anticipating having to kind of catch up on some of that work in the future, and maybe gear preservation more a little higher in subsequent years, just because of what you missed this year?
Yeah, exactly. That's what we've got set up for our FY21 now, because we've now embarked into the new year, and our budget does reflect that. We're now this year's budget actually is considerably higher because we're making up for that. We're using some of the funds because our revenues did come in fairly well, and where our tax payments did come in pretty much on target. So we did ask to bring some of that monies that weren't spent in FY20, move them forward to FY21, which will allow us to do, we're basically doing just what you said, Conrad. We're doing the catch-up mode in 2021. We're going to knock out all of our preservation work that we had slated for 20, and then add on what we were planning to do in 21, which will, be, a bunch of asphalt rubber chip seals and, our typical crack sealing program. We were able to do that in FY20, but, we'll do as much this year coming up in FY21, and we're actually going to try to take on another a reclaim type project, which, I go back and forth with that. With it's not a full depth reconstruction, but it's the in between treatment, as I call it. But we're gonna do some reclaim because we've had some stuff get by us a little bit too much. So we've added that in as another special project. So we'll be up around about 745K on this year's road program. But we've applied some stuff to hopefully take the sting out for people. And our goal was when I came here 5 years ago was to try to get our road program up around $500,000, because that's what's needed to actually try to keep up with the preservation and maintenance work.
Excellent. I think that's awesome. And, the fact that you're able to get that funding back in is huge. I guess I kind of wonder, how's the residents' feedback been? How has everything been, both in this past year, in terms of how things have had to change and working through all of that. And then, you mentioned as far as, the last 5 years and trying to up that budget, how's the resident feedback been, and how has some of that feedback impacted your planning and execution of all of this?
Yeah, I mean, I think the residents have been, we've kept pretty good communication with them so that they understood what was happening through the whole budget and the freezes, and being, conservatively cautious, through the whole process, I guess I would call it. So we've kept them informed. And I think also that, the board actually taken saying, okay, we're going to move forward here. We know we can't let these things go. And putting the money forward into 2021, I think will do us well. I really do. I think, and we're also coming in on, and there's another piece to this is that I've come into with this whole administration thing, is we just finished a property reevaluation. So here in New Hampshire, of course, everything's based on property taxes. So we just had a reeval. So we now have some higher values for our community itself, which has knocked our tax rate down. which helps out, for us when you end up going for some of these bigger projects. That way, some of the folks that have a higher assessment, of course, it hits them a little bit harder, of course. But overall, people here in this community have been very supportive of their roads program. And we've done some good due diligence in doing RSMS programming with our roads and keeping up with that and being able to forecast with that. So it kind of lets them know where we were headed. They've known ever since I came through the door of my background, and that I wasn't going to tell them they could do all this stuff cheap. That you have to spend money in order to take care of the largest and most expensive asset that they have.
Yeah, that's well said, Scott. And I want to dig a little bit deeper into that balance between, the working on the bad roads and trying to preserve some of the good roads. As a past public works director, one of the things I struggled on was conveying that message to my elected officials of the need to spend a portion of our funding on the top of the curve to keep good roads good. And you're in the unique position as a past public works director, an elected road agent, and now an elected town administrator. What kind of advice do you have to the elected officials out there on, the need to kind of have that balance in your budget between bad roads and preserving good roads?
Well, yeah, there's no doubt. And I know, as a public works director, that was one of the biggest things and one of the first and foremost things that I had to kind of get my head around. Luckily, I had, a lot of educational training that came along from the local LTAP, which did help me out with that and trying to convey that message. Because when I took over, and probably very similar to yourself, Art, is that, it was a lot of old school, fix the old, the worst roads. It was actually when I came in, I was handed, okay, this is the top 10 worst roads in town. These are the ones that you spend the money on. And I'm going, no. That's not, I've been trained quite to the opposite. So now you had to do the re-education, like you said, of your elected officials and your community to be able to do that. And so that's a big nugget. I tell people that when I was a police chief, I never did a PowerPoint program. So, and then I became public works director, and it was these types of show and tells that you had to do, and showing that curve, of your asphalt life cycles and those types of things that you had to show to select boards and educate them as to why we spend our money on preservation to get the long bang out of our buck on these paved roads, and how we can, extend those life cycles and save us money in the long run. And so we've, I have to say it does take a lot of work of that education and refreshing it, because as you get new board members and those types of things that end up happening, but you have to do the show and tell with them, and be able to do that with them. You have to show them what some of these treatments actually look like, and test a few of those treatments, and have them kind of be involved with them, take the pictures, put them on your website, those types of things there to get people to kind of get the grasp of it all, and I think we've had good luck with that. When I'm able to show that I can do close to 3 miles of chip seal for doing preservation work on our local roads, and then I can only do roughly a mile of a shim and overlay. I say that to them. I say, see, this is how this is working. We can actually get more miles of treatment out of different prescriptions, so to speak, of treatment. So
absolutely, that in the elected officials' defense, there is a lot of pressure to work on those bad roads. But as Bobby and Conrad and myself, we talk every day. We're basically pothole preventers, is what we're doing by taking these roads that are in decent shape, preserving them. Is it perfect? It might not be 100% perfect all the time, but it's going to preserve those roads in a good condition. And you can't neglect those bad roads. Try to keep chipping away at them. But if you spend all your money on just the bad roads, you're always going to have bad roads. So I think that's an important point that you brought up, Scott. Thank you.
Yeah, and I would just add to that I don't know how you did it when you were there, but I ended up I came up with either some years I was like an 80-20, 80% I was spending on my preservation work, 20% on doing reconstruction work, or I called it the shouldering period, with using some reclaim applications in there as well. So there'd be a little bit of fudge back and forth as to what you had to do. And as you know, sometimes you got to do more of one type of treatment in order to get, good economy of scale for your money. So sometimes there is a little bit of flex in that. I used to bounce back and forth between the 20%, 30% piece to that. And then, as people do, they make the biggest noise out of, those roads that are really bad. And sometimes you end up having to do a little bit of something, you take and do a greater shim, with some material, because you say, hey, listen, I know I'm not going to get here fast enough for them. So, I have a little bit of extra asphalt money. And so we're going to tailgate some out and fix some of these really bad spots in order to just kind of keep it good, because we know that, within the next 3 to 5, we're going to be up here and we're going to end up reclaiming the road, and we're going to end up having to box it out because it has some underpinnings that are more than what the surface or the surface is telling us what the underpinnings are.
Your public works passion is coming out, Scott. I love it.
I do too.
It's interesting.
I enjoy that part of it.
You mentioned on the education portion of it, and obviously the education for the community. But and I know you and I have worked together with the LTAP up there in New Hampshire quite a bit. I was wondering if you could just talk a little bit about what you've gotten out of working with the LTAP in terms of classes and learning, and then also I know you've done some instructing for them, especially with the Green Snow Pro. So just maybe take a couple of minutes and talk about the involvement of the LTAP and how that, not just in New Hampshire, but I think it certainly applies across all of New England and across the country, of leveraging the resources available there.
Yeah, I mean, I've had great success working with the LTAP. They've been a great bunch of people there, and I've gotten to meet people like you, Bobby, and Bruce from Bruce Davis that works this area as well. So I've gotten to make those relationships, which has worked well when it comes down to when you need to brainstorm and look at projects and assess them as well. So that type of collaboration works well. But the LTAP has been great. I've had good fortune when I was looking to change careers, when I knew I was going to retire from law enforcement. I prepared myself and put myself through their Road Scholar program. So the New Hampshire LTAP does a Road Scholar program. So once you reach 100 instructional hours of instruction there, you become a Master Road Scholar. So when I ran for Public Works, a road agent position, I had achieved my Master Road Scholar, which was great because, I wasn't an engineer. I wasn't, I hadn't worked in Public Works other than I had worked for them as a contractor, subcontractor, believe it or not, throughout my law enforcement career in doing winter maintenance, snow plowing operations, because they hired contract companies, and I had a company that I did on the side for that. But I continued on throughout the time that I was Public Works Director, and even still now as a town administrator, attending their classes, and then became involved in participating with doing some instruction and also being on some of the boards that we've done. We've done some with pavement preservation work and in educating some of our elected officials as well about different kinds of pavement work. We all know that that's generally the most expensive piece to the road part of it as well. So I think that that's worked very, very well. I like winter maintenance other than staying up all night. I think probably Art, you can remember those sleepless nights of being a Public Works Director and being an elected one. You had to babysit that quite a bit. But I've gotten involved in trying to look at winter maintenance and what's going to work the best to try to get the achieve hopefully getting down to a good paved surface and doing it environmentally friendly. So I've gotten involved with, I did a lot of work as Public Works Director and using treated salts as far as my applications that I utilize because of being a lakefront community and wanting to be environmentally friendly that way. I looked at all those different things and was able to use less salt by being environmentally friendly by using a treated salt. So I got involved in the Green Snow Pro program as well, And I also had put together a winter maintenance forecasting type of program for the LTAP as well, as far as looking at the weather conditions and looking at, different types of treatments that can be utilized for different snow events and winter events. So that's worked out well. I think it really goes a long way. I mean, municipalities are not required to participate in the Green Snow Pro because that was actually designed to help out private contractors. In New Hampshire, there's actually a state law that allows them that once they receive this certification and they maintain it, as long as they follow the best management practices that are instructed in that class, then they have some legal ability to be defended under the statute, as long as they're following those best management practices for any litigation aspects towards them. So it really helps them out on the torts and liability side. It helps them out with getting their insurance rates that are reasonable. So that's a good thing for a bang for their buck on that side. Plus, they're learning the cutting edges of new technology as far as winter maintenance goes, different types of treatments, liquid and solids, and then plowing. I mean, just re-emphasizing that don't burn it off, plow it off, aspects. So that's a good thing. And it goes back to pavement. I have to say that, if you get good pavement out there, you can use less product and do winter maintenance. I remember dealing with those roads, and when they start getting all rutted up and broken up, they are harder and harder to take care of in the wintertime. So, because people are looking for the blacktop, they nowadays, they don't want to drive on, what I remember as a kid driving on, which was snowpacked roads all winter long. Those days are gone. It really kind of, I really enjoy it. I really do, as far as trying to, help people kind of diagnose it, problem solve it. I've always been a problem solver, so it works well.
Awesome.
So I guess, we're kind of coming up to the end here. We're trying to keep these fairly short. I would ask you, Scott, obviously you've got a very diverse background. You've been on numerous sides of the equation. If you had to give one piece of advice, kind of one takeaway for your colleagues on the administrative side as it relates to public works, what would that be?
I guess you're going to hold me to one thing. It's always tough, as you can tell. Me to only say one thing, Bobby. Now that's a tough one. I know. I would say that they really need to listen to their public works directors and their road managers, people that are out there, and also just they got to really be open to understanding and learning what it is about a road and what the characteristics are about a road. And I really think that the trainings that are available to elected officials, unfortunately, they don't take a large advantage of. But I hope that the administrators and that we are able to continue to push out information to administrators to help them, because we are basically the communication tool between managers or department heads and the elected boards. So if the administrator is up on it and they can help sell it with their department heads, road agents and such, then I think they'll be successful. But if they can't get their head around it, and it's all about being a bean counter and that kind of thing, it's great to be a bean counter, but you gotta have some education and wait for all to understand what it is and what goes into roads.
All right, Scott, this was awesome. Thank you so much for coming on. And I just want to say, a lot of great, useful information there, not only from the town administration side, but also the public works side. So with that being said, we're going to close out this episode. Make sure you subscribe below and like our page, and we'll see you next time on New England Road Talk.
Thanks, Scott. It's been awesome.